If I had ignored the phone call at 2:17 a.m., I would not be telling this story. That single moment, that single decision, split my life into two parts, before the call and after the nightmare began. My name is Ethan Cross. I lived alone in a small apartment at the edge of the city, the kind of place where the lights flicker even when there is no wind and the walls seem to breathe at night. Rain tapped against the windows like fingernails, slow and deliberate. My phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. I stared at it. Every instinct told me not to answer. My heart was heavy, my chest tight, as if something unseen was already standing too close. I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe a wrong number. Maybe an emergency. That thought was my bad decision. I answered. At first, there was only breathing. Deep, uneven, wet breathing, like lungs filled with water. I said hello. The breathing stopped. Then a voice whispered my name. Not shouted. Not spoken. Whispered. No one should have known my name. The call ended. My phone screen went dark, but the feeling stayed. I locked the door, checked every room, every corner. Nothing. No intruder. No open window. I tried to sleep, but the air felt thick, heavy, wrong. Minutes later, my phone vibrated again. A message appeared. You let me in. I dropped the phone. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was a prank. Someone trying to scare me. I believed that lie because the truth was far worse. From that night onward, the apartment felt occupied. Not by a person, but by something patient. Something that had been waiting for permission. And I had given it exactly what it wanted. The next morning, I woke with scratches on my arms. Thin, red lines, perfectly parallel, as if traced by careful fingers. I did not remember scratching myself. The bathroom mirror showed dark circles under my eyes, deeper than any sleepless night should cause. The apartment smelled different. Damp, metallic, like old blood mixed with rust. While making coffee, I heard footsteps above me. Slow pacing. I lived on the top floor. I froze. The footsteps stopped the moment I noticed them. That was the pattern that followed me everywhere. When I became aware, it stopped. When I tried to ignore it, it moved closer. At work, my phone buzzed constantly. No calls. Only messages. I see you. You walk like him. Your shadow is wrong. I turned my phone off, but that did not stop it. Reflections began to betray me. In the office restroom mirror, my reflection smiled when my face did not. In the elevator, my shadow leaned the wrong direction. That night, I heard knocking from inside the walls. Not pipes. Not animals. Knocking with rhythm. 3 slow taps. A pause. 3 more. I pressed my ear to the wall. Something whispered back. Not words. My thoughts. Every regret. Every fear. Every memory I had buried. It knew me. At 2:17 a.m., the knocking stopped. My phone turned on by itself. One new message. Come closer. I understood then that it was no longer outside. It was learning the shape of my life, the sound of my breathing, the timing of my heartbeat. And it was not alone. On the third night, I saw him. I woke to the sound of my apartment door unlocking. I was certain I had locked it. The footsteps were heavier now. Confident. Familiar. I stepped into the hallway and saw a man standing near the door. He was me. Same height. Same face. Same scar on the chin from childhood. But his eyes were wrong. Too dark. Too deep. Like empty rooms with no walls. He smiled slowly. I needed your voice, he said. That was the price. My body refused to move. He walked past me, brushing my shoulder. His skin was cold and damp, like stone pulled from deep water. He sat on my couch, relaxed, as if he belonged there. As if I did not. You answered, he continued. That was consent. I screamed. The lights shattered. Darkness swallowed the room. When the lights returned, he was gone. The door was locked. No sign of forced entry. Except for one thing. My reflection in the mirror blinked late that I searched for answers. Old books. Forgotten forums. People who talked about things that should not exist. I found a single rule repeated again and again. Never answer unknown calls after midnight. Not because of hackers. Not because of criminals. Because some things travel through sound. The entity had a name. Not one meant for human mouths. It was described as a caller. A parasite of identity. It did not kill immediately. It replaced. It wore you until nothing of you remained. At 2:17 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, I did not answer. The ringing continued. The walls began to bleed. The morning light did nothing to ease the sense of dread that had taken root in me. My neighbor, Mr. Caldwell, had been found dead, slumped in his apartment like a broken marionette. The police reported his throat crushed inward, his eyes wide in a frozen scream of unimaginable terror. His body looked as though something had reached into him from the air itself, as if some invisible hand had yanked the life from him without mercy. The coroner's report used clinical words: asphyxiation due to unknown external forces. But the moment I saw the photograph of him, a shiver ran down my spine, and my hands trembled uncontrollably. It wasn't just the horror of his death. It was the subtle detail in the image, the slight distortion of his features. His eyes, they seemed to glimmer with a malicious awareness, as though he had seen the thing before he died and had recognized it. And worse, there was a phone in his hand. But it was not his. The screen showed a single word in blood-red letters: answer. I had thought the worst was over, that the call was just a twisted prelude. But seeing him, feeling the air around his body, I understood the magnitude of my mistake. This entity, it did not kill out of anger. It killed for amusement. And now, I was next in line. That night, the apartment felt alive. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, flickering with movement I could not track. The breathing started again, soft at first, almost playful, then louder, closer, as though something was standing right behind me. My reflection in the hallway mirror was not my own. Its smile lingered long after I had turned away. The phone rang at 2:17 a.m. again. I did not answer. I could not. And yet, every vibration made my chest tighten as if it were ringing inside me. Then came scratching noises from the walls. At first faint, like fingernails on plaster. Then louder, more insistent, forming words I could almost comprehend. You let me in. I fell to my knees, covering my ears, begging myself to wake up. But the apartment was real. Caldwell's death was real. The entity's amusement was only beginning. I could feel it in the air, watching, feeding on fear, and I realized with a crushing certainty that ignoring the phone would not save me. Not anymore. Somewhere deep inside, I knew that each sound, each shadow, each whisper was a countdown to my turn, a ritual I could not escape. The first body was only the beginning, and the entity had made its rules clear. I had entered the game. And losing was not an option. It was inevitable. Sleep stopped meaning rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched from inside my own skull. My dreams were no longer dreams. They were rehearsals. I would see my apartment from corners I had never stood in, watching myself move through rooms with stiff, unnatural precision. When I woke, my body felt used, heavy, as if something else had borrowed it and returned it damaged. I began losing time. Entire hours vanished. I would sit on my couch, blinking once, and suddenly it would be morning. My phone told stories I could not remember writing. Messages sent at 2:17 a.m., calls placed to unknown numbers. Voice notes saved in my own voice, whispering things I could not bring myself to play again. At work, people stared. One coworker asked if I was sick. Another asked why I kept smiling at nothing. I tried to explain, but the words came out wrong, twisted, like they were being filtered through someone else's mouth. I started avoiding mirrors. They no longer obeyed me. The thing that looked like me appeared more often, sometimes in reflections, sometimes standing at the end of hallways. Always closer, always clearer. Its movements were smoother than mine, more confident. It walked like it owned my body already. At night, my phone rang without sound. The screen lit up with incoming calls that never stopped. When I turned it off, the ringing continued anyway, vibrating through my bones. I could feel it in my teeth, in my ribs, in the back of my eyes. One night, I woke standing in my kitchen, holding a knife. The sink was full of black water that smelled like copper. Written on the wall in something thick and dark were the words, "I am learning." My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From excitement. A feeling that was not mine. That was when I realized the truth. Possession was not sudden. It was gradual. A slow erasure. The entity was not forcing me out. It was waiting for me to disappear on my own. And with every unanswered call, with every moment of terror, it was getting closer to finishing the job. The ringing started inside me. At first, I thought it was my heart. A strange rhythm, irregular, vibrating too fast. Then I recognized it. The exact tone of my phone. The same pattern. The same pulse. I pressed my hand against my chest and felt it vibrate back. Every breath hurt. My lungs burned as if I were inhaling wires instead of air. When I opened my mouth to scream, a voice answered from my throat. Not mine. I hear you, it said. I collapsed onto the floor, choking, gagging, my vision swimming. My reflection in the oven door was smiling wide, eyes empty and thrilled. I felt something coil around my spine, pulling, aligning, settling into place like it had always belonged there. The phone rang again. This time, I answered without touching anything. The call connected through me. Memories poured out of my head, siphoned away. Childhood, faces, names, replaced by something cold and ancient. I saw countless others, all answering, all making the same mistake, all reduced to echoes. The entity laughed through my lungs. You sound just like him now, it whispered. I understood then. I was becoming the phone, the channel, the doorway. My body was no longer just mine. It was infrastructure. And the ringing never stopped. I watched my body leave the apartment. It moved smoothly, confidently, as if I had practiced this movement 1,000 times. But I was not controlling it. I was trapped inside, screaming silently, pounding at the walls of my own skull. My lungs burned, my chest tightened, my heart raced, and yet it walked like it belonged to someone else. Every step, every gesture, every glance in the mirror was perfect, eerily perfect, but it wasn't mine. I could feel it replacing me, strand by strand, thought by thought, memory by memory. The apartment was silent, but I sensed its presence everywhere. It leaned against the walls, hiding in shadows, whispering secrets I had never known I kept. Each object I once owned seemed to pulse with life, with awareness, as if everything had turned against me. I tried to reach out to the phone on the counter, to destroy it, to sever the connection. But my hand passed through it like smoke. I was tethered, bound, made of air and despair. Through my eyes, I saw the body I once inhabited check the phone. Messages I did not write appeared on the screen. Calls made at 2:17 a.m. to unknown numbers. Each interaction filled me with dread. The entity was teaching it, training it, perfecting the mimicry until nothing of me remained. I realized I wasn't just trapped. I was being replaced, a placeholder while the entity learned the rhythm of my life. It began to mock me from inside my own head. Whispers slithered in my ears. You thought you were safe. You are nothing now. I am you, and you are me. This is the beginning. The walls seemed to close in, breathing with a malevolent consciousness. I felt the air thicken, my skin crawl, shadows crawling up the ceiling, stretching unnaturally. They moved like living things, circling, waiting, testing. My own reflection in the glass door smiled with a malicious glee, mocking the terror I felt but could not express. I screamed, but it was silent. My voice had already been claimed, borrowed, rewritten. I could hear every step, every movement of the body I used to control, leaving, entering the world outside, interacting with others, perfectly human, perfectly mine, but not. And I realized that this replacement was not an accident, not a byproduct of answering the call. It was the purpose. By the time I fully understood, it was too late. The replacement was complete. My memories, my fears, my identity were being siphoned slowly, methodically, until only the shell remained. The apartment was quiet, but I knew it waited for the next step. My body, my life, my essence, it had already been claimed. And somewhere in the distance, my phone rang. Unknown number. They arrived in the early hours of the morning, red and blue lights bleeding through the windows like open wounds. I watched from inside my stolen body as the police stepped into the apartment I once called home. Their boots echoed against the floor, each step heavy, final, as if the place itself already knew the outcome. The smell of death clung to the air, thick and unmistakable. It followed them as they moved deeper inside. They found my body in the bedroom. It was lying unnaturally still, eyes open, mouth frozen in a half-formed scream. My skin had turned pale, almost gray, stretched tight over bone. The coroner knelt beside it, checking the pulse he already knew wasn't there. He spoke in a flat, professional tone, describing what he saw, reducing my end to medical terms and cold observations. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. No visible signs of struggle. Time of death, 2:17 a.m. The words echoed inside me like a verdict. I stood just behind them, breathing calmly, hands steady, heart beating strong in a chest that no longer belonged to me. I felt nothing when they zipped the body into a bag. No grief, no fear, Only a quiet, spreading satisfaction that made my skin feel too tight. One officer noticed the phone on the nightstand. It was ringing when we came in, he said. The screen lit up again. Unknown number. The ringing stopped the moment he touched it. They bagged the phone as evidence, unaware that it was no longer needed. The connection had already been established. The damage already done. As they left, I followed, stepping over the threshold without resistance. The apartment door closed behind me. I felt something loosen, something release its hold. The place was no longer important. The body was no longer important. I was free. The report would be filed. The case would be closed. A lonely man. An unexplained death. Another statistic. None of them noticed the way I smiled as I walked away. None of them realized that the thing wearing my face was not the victim. It was the continuation. The graveyard smelled of wet earth and decay. Rain fell steadily, soaking through black coats, darkening the soil until it looked like open flesh. I stood among the mourners, close enough to hear their breathing, close enough to see tears slide down faces that meant nothing to me anymore. No one noticed me. No one questioned why I stood so still, so calm, as if this ceremony belonged to someone else. The coffin lay suspended above the ground. Inside it was my body. My face looked wrong from a distance, pale and hollow, lips slightly parted as if I had tried to scream one last time and failed. I remembered that moment clearly. The pressure in my chest, the ringing consuming everything, the feeling of being emptied. They lowered the coffin slowly. The ropes creaked. The sound drilled into my skull. With each inch it descended, something inside me tightened. Not grief, not regret, but a deep, crawling satisfaction. The body hitting the bottom felt final. Heavy. Correct. A priest spoke words about rest and peace. Lies spoken gently. When the first shovel of dirt hit the coffin lid, I felt it vibrate through my bones. Not fear. Recognition. The body below was no longer me. It was an object. A discarded shell. My name was carved into the stone behind it. Ethan Cross. The letters looked shallow, fragile, like they could be erased easily. As the crowd dispersed, the graveyard emptied. Fog rolled in thick and low, wrapping around the headstones like something alive. I stepped closer to the grave, staring down at the disturbed soil. For a moment, the ground shifted. Subtle. Wrong. As if something beneath it moved. The phone vibrated in my pocket. Unknown number. The ringing was slow. Patient. I didn't answer. The screen lit up with a message instead. You belong outside now. I looked back at the grave one last time. The earth was still. Silent. Whatever was buried there was finished. I turned away, carrying my face, my name, my life forward, empty of humanity, full of purpose. Across the city, a woman sat alone on her bed, scrolling aimlessly on her phone. The room was quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. She was tired, half asleep, her thoughts unfocused. When her phone began to ring, she frowned. Unknown number. She hesitated. The ringing didn't stop. Her chest tightened for reasons she couldn't explain. Something about the sound felt wrong, invasive, like fingers tapping directly against her thoughts. She told herself it was nothing, just another wrong call. She answered. Hello. Her voice echoed strangely through the connection. I felt it immediately. The shift, the opening, the permission. Her breathing quickened. Is anyone there? She asked. I listened. I tasted her fear. Fresh. Untouched. The line stayed open. She felt watched. She glanced at her door, then at the dark corner of her room. A shadow moved where none should exist. Her reflection in the mirror blinked late. She tried to hang up. The phone wouldn't disconnect. I smiled. The first whisper slipped through the line, shaping itself from stolen voices. Her body stiffened as the sound reached her ear. She didn't scream yet. That came later. I ended the call gently. She stared at the screen, shaking, convinced it was over. It wasn't. The process had begun. Your phone is ringing. You notice it before you hear it. A vibration that crawls through the surface beneath your hand and climbs into your bones. The screen lights up, harsh and bright in the dimness around you. Unknown number. No name. No location. Just the insistence of it. Relentless. Intimate. As if it has always been meant for you and only you. Your heartbeat changes. Not faster, wrong. Out of rhythm. Like something has slipped between the beats and begun keeping time for you. Your throat tightens. You tell yourself this is nothing. You tell yourself you have seen stories like this, heard warnings, learned lessons secondhand. You tell yourself you are not foolish enough to repeat someone else's mistake. The ringing continues. Your thoughts start to fracture. Practical excuses rise first. A wrong call. A scam. A bored stranger dialing random numbers in the dark. Then come the quieter thoughts, the ones that slide under your skin. What if it's important? What if someone needs help? What if ignoring it is the real mistake? The screen pulses once, twice, as if responding to your hesitation. Somewhere very close, closer than the walls, closer than the air, you feel a tension settle on you. Not a presence you can see, not a sound you can trace, but a pressure, like a finger pressed gently against the inside of your skull. Testing. Waiting. You remember stories of people who vanished without drama. No struggle, no violence, just a gradual absence, noticed too late. People whose names became stone carvings and closed cases. People who were described as quiet, withdrawn, changed near the end. People who answered when they should not have. The phone rings again. Your breathing feels loud, exposed. You become aware of how you inhale, how long you pause, how you exhale. The rhythm is being learned, memorized. You imagine the sound traveling somewhere it shouldn't, being cataloged, matched, refined. Your reflection in the dark screen looks like you. Almost. The eyes seem deeper than they should be, as if something behind them is leaning forward to get a better look. You tilt your head slightly, and the reflection mirrors you perfectly. Too perfectly. You consider ignoring the call. The idea brings a sharp, sudden fear, stronger than the fear of answering. An image flashes through your mind uninvited. Your phone continuing to ring long after you have turned it off, long after you have buried it in a drawer, long after you have convinced yourself it's over. You imagine the sound following you into sleep, into dreams, into the quiet spaces where your guard drops. You consider answering. Your thumb hovers over the screen. The phone feels warm now. Alive. You swear you can feel a faint pulse beneath the glass, syncing itself with your altered heartbeat. The longer you hesitate, the more personal it feels, like the call is growing impatient with your indecision. You tell yourself that you can hang up immediately, that you don't have to say anything, that you will stay in control. That is the lie it is waiting for. The ringing stops for half a second, then resumes, louder, sharper. A message appears beneath the number. I know you're there. Your stomach drops. The room feels smaller. The shadows along the edges of your vision seem thicker, heavier, as if they have weight. You become painfully aware of how alone you are, how thin the barrier is between you and whatever is reaching through that screen. You think of Ethan Cross, of a man who stood at his own grave and walked away wearing himself like a stolen coat, of a decision made in seconds that unraveled an entire existence thread by thread. You think of the woman who answered next, her fear fresh and untested, her life opening like a door left unlocked. You tell yourself you are different. The phone rings again. Your thumb presses down before you can stop it. The call connects. At first, there is breathing. Deep. Careful. As if the other end is savoring the moment. You freeze, every muscle locked, every instinct screaming too late. You try to pull the phone away, but your hand feels heavy, unresponsive. Then a voice speaks. Not loud, not rushed. It says your name exactly the way you say it in your head. Something inside you shifts. A subtle click, like a lock opening. The voice listens as your breath stutters, as your heart betrays its new rhythm. You feel yourself being mapped, outlined, copied in real time. You try to speak, but the words stick. The voice doesn't need you to answer. It already has what it came for. Images slide into your thoughts that are not memories, but rehearsals. You see yourself from angles you have never stood in. You hear your voice used with a confidence you do not feel. You sense the slow, methodical process beginning, the patient replacement that does not rush because it does not need to. The voice thanks you. The call ends. You stare at the screen, shaking, convincing yourself it's over. That nothing else happened. That you are still you. That nothing else happened. That you are still you. You place the phone down carefully, as if sudden movement might provoke something. Minutes pass. Then you notice the first gap. A moment you cannot account for. A thought that feels thinner than it should. A reflection that lingers half a second too long. You laugh nervously, dismissing it, but the sound doesn't feel anchored to you anymore. Your phone vibrates. This time, you don't need to look to know what it says. Somewhere very close, something wearing a familiar face smiles, perfectly practiced, and waits for the next call to ring. If you enjoyed this horror story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon for more terrifying stories.